Hi, I'm David Kais, and I run R for the rest of us. You may think of R as a tool for complex statistical analysis, but it's much more than that. From data visualization to efficient reporting to improving your workflow, R can do it all. On this podcast, I talk with people about how they use R in unique and creative ways. I'm delighted to be joined today by Meghan Harris. Meghan is a data integration specialist at the Primary Care Research Institute at the University of Buffalo. There, she brings together data from multiple sources to create insights that benefit people affected by opioid use disorder. And when Meghan's not creating slick data pipelines, she makes art using R, which she posts on Twitter at Meghan S. Harris, and that's Meghan S. Harris, Harris. Meghan, thank you for being with me today. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Super excited to talk about this today.
Meghan, just to learn a bit about you, when did you start using R?
So the first time or the successful time? So the very first time I started using R was probably in the year 2019. And that was because I had started a position as an evaluation associate. And there was a project that I inherited where someone had used it, but the someone was gone already. And I was kind of just like, I don't know what this is. So when I found out like what it was, me being as hard-headed as I am, I'm just like, I'm going to make a shiny app without learning how to upload data into it or anything. So clearly I failed. And I felt really rejected and dejected from our studios. So I kind of just took a few months off. And then I had some downtime, I think, at the beginning of 2020 in January. And that's when I kind of really was just like, okay, let's do this right. Let's actually like do piece by piece. So we can say 2019 or we can say 2020. It depends.
I mean, honestly, I think your experience is actually pretty common. I personally did a workshop in 2015 at the American Evaluation Association conference on making data viz with ggplot, but I had never used R before. And in retrospect, it was a terrible way to be introduced to R, because if you don't understand the fundamentals, making data viz and ggplot isn't going to mean anything to you.
Yeah.
And it was only later when I went back and similarly said, like, okay, I'm intrigued by this. Let me sit down and go through it step by step that I actually started to figure it out.
I kind of have the same thing. And David, I don't know if you remember this, but you kind of aided in me kind of going back into this, really, because I want to say I really took another look at it after I came back from the American Evaluation Association conference in 2019. So by that time I had already been trying, and like when I saw it fleshed out, because I think your presentation was on R Markdown, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yep.
So once it was like I saw someone else doing something, because you weren't the only one that was doing something in R, it was other people too. I got so like hyped and jazzed about it. I was just like, no, this is where I need to be at. So I kind of like used the inspiration from everyone's things at that conference and came back, and kind of that's when I went full force and things just started to click for me. I don't know. That's all I can like describe it. It's just things just started to click.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you do kind of hit that moment and then things make sense.
Yeah.
And for me, what that feels like is even if I don't know how to do something, I know what I need to do to get to the
Right.
point where I could
Right.
understand it. Whereas before that, it's like, I don't know how to do anything and I don't know how to get to that point.
Right.
So,
Exactly.
so I was going to ask you why you switched, but clearly I know the answer, which is you were kind of forced to, and then wanted to. I'm curious what changed for you then when you actually did start, really diving into R and
Hmm.
using it.
Yeah. So what changed for me was the method, all right? Because when I first started trying to learn, first it was that I had this code that I completely did not understand. I did not understand what was going on. The person whose project I inherited, they were using it to do regressions and stuff, So I was just like, oh my gosh, what is this? So it was this piece of needing to understand this, but then it was also kind of like I felt, like you said, I felt like I was forced to try to learn something to get this project out, to the client. So what changed after I came back from that conference? I had a shift in mindset, honestly. And when people ask me this, they ask me like, how did you get like started, stuff like that. What I ended up what I used to do was I would literally be like, okay, here's the R for data science book. I'm going to read this cover to cover and I used to have like a study schedule, and I felt so just frustrated because nothing ever felt like it stuck. So what changed for me was just realizing, I kind of work in this position where like my role is not really in data, but like I'm an evaluation associate. There's some aspect of data, and there was some flexibility of like, oh, like I can do this evaluation report, but I had this opportunity to clean some data or to do a visualization or something like that. So that's kind of where I was just like, okay, I have this data set. I need to clean it so that I can put it in Tableau. I learned how to do Tableau first before I learned R. So when it was kind of like breaking it down and like finally understanding like, okay, I don't need to read a book cover to cover because that just doesn't personally work for me. What I need is to understand what it is I'm trying to do. And then I'll go ahead and spend 2 weeks Googling how to do it. But at the end of the 2 weeks, I will have done it. So that's kind of like, it was just like a loop of like constantly new things I need to Google for a few weeks to figure out to do my job. And then it ended up being like, oh, I made a ggplot before. I got to do that again. Oh, okay. I've cleaned this. I got to do this again. And that's where things just kind of started sticking for me, just having to do it, you know?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I know I've talked to a lot of people who said, they tried to take a really similar approach, like let me read R for data science, front cover to back cover. And it's hard because even if you read it and it makes sense while you're reading it, when you then go into R Studio yourself and you're trying to work, it doesn't quite click until you're actually doing
Doing it.
something in context. So I think that was really smart. So that was when you were working as an evaluation associate
Mm-hmm.
in a different job.
Yep.
You then moved to a position at the University of Buffalo. Can
Mm-hmm.
you just give kind of an overview of what your job is there, what types of things you
Yeah.
do and how you use R?
Yes. So I have been able to completely create entire pipelines for like my local department of opioid. We have like for our local government, like health department, we have an opioid department. So when they created the position, I don't think they really intended someone to kind of come in and like do programming. It was just basic data. I don't want to say analysis because data analysts are not basic, but it was kind of like the posting itself was really vague. There wasn't really a lot of like, oh, you should have like this experience because what I found out the hard way was that there really wasn't any structure there. There wasn't any structure. So basically what happened was that I had my interviews, showed them examples of like, processing and analyses I've done in R. And when I did the interviews is like, no one really understood, I could tell no one really understood like how powerful like the R language was. All they knew was that I knew how to do something that they didn't know how to do and it sounded like a good fit. So they hired me. So I always say like I totally got lucky. I mean, not to discredit the work that I've done to get there being self-taught, but like I got lucky. So basically I came in and they're just like, okay, here's the data, go. That's it. So, um, so I had to end up starting to like piece together this pipeline, and it took a long time. I mean, I was in this position, it'll be 2 years, in a few weeks actually, where I kind of just came in, started doing like these data landscapes of like, okay, where is all this data coming from? Because that's essentially what it is. So I am a person that wrangles all of this data from different sources, whether it is our local police departments, whether it is surveys that the Department of Health created themselves, whether it's census data, it doesn't matter. I'm pulling it in and making it in a centralized location. So what ended up happening through the years was that they needed all these different deliverables. So we have pipelines that go from R into like Tableau. We have ones that go into Shiny dashboards. A part of that one is like an example of the one that I uploaded for you to review, where we kind of had this modularized set of pipelines just doing a whole bunch of stuff to give one output. So I think in a nutshell, that kind of embodies everything. I mean, there's a lot packed into that though.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it does seem like data integration specialist is a good title for the types of things you're doing.
Definitely.
So the reason we're talking today, the reason I reached out to you, or well, you shared with me that you had done some work where you brought data in using Google Forms. Is that right?
Yep.
Which
Google
then,
Sheets. Yep.
yeah. And was it a survey done with Google Forms that then went to Google Sheets? Or what? Can you kind of explain, I guess, the overall process, like what the project was? And obviously, we're not going to talk about that specific project because it has private data
Mhm.
that we can't go into.
Right.
But we'll talk about it in the context of another example you shared with me. But so maybe to start out, this is a very long-winded question, very
Mhm.
long-winded way of me asking you if you could just give an overview of what the workflow of this example project you shared with me looks like.
Sure. So, I mean, in the actual work that I've done with, UB or with the county, basically what it was that we had people that were going to Google Forms themselves and entering data, answering our survey questions. So whether you use Google Forms or whether you have it just data just being entered manually into Google spreadsheets, the flow is kind of the same because when you use Google Forms, I believe you have that option. I'm not sure if that does that automatically, but in my experience, and whenever I have Google Forms data, it's always getting exported into a Google spreadsheet. So basically what I was tasked with was just like, oh, okay, we have like a lot of survey data that's just kind of sitting there in Google Forms. Do something with it. So for the project that I unfortunately can't share, but I can give like a high level of what happened was that, okay, we had like hundreds of old Google Form data and we needed to put it into some kind of PDF report. So that's where I kind of started getting this pipeline idea of like having these different sections of like, okay, this is the data coming in. This is how I can check to see if there's differences or new data and just a kind of a stepwise process of what was needed for whatever. So if I need visuals, I have a script for that. If I need processing or cleaning, I have one for that. So it just really was dependent on what was in front of me at the time.
Yeah. And I think like the piece that I'm, most interested in for this conversation is that way that you used R to connect directly to Google
Mm-hmm.
Sheets. And so if other people have worked with Google Sheets, I mean, of course you could, like, a lot of people do analysis in Google Sheets. So
Right.
they'll have their data, their raw data maybe, and then they have a separate tab where they're doing their analysis or whatever, making pivot tables. I don't know, because that's not my world. I don't know exactly what you would do, but
Right.
I have a broad sense. Um, Other people might like download the data from Google Sheets and say work with it in Excel or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
or even work with it in R. But you actually used a package Google Sheets for
Mm-hmm.
that connected directly to Google Sheets. Can you talk about um, how you did, like what that package does, how and kind of how it works, and what the main advantages to using it are?
Sure. So, to my understanding, because I've honestly only used Google Sheets for this purpose, I have been meaning to take the time to sit and just like, cause there's so much more you can do, like interacting with the Google console and platform through R with it. But for the purpose of this project, what it's used for is to kind of like make this API connection between your R console and the Google server. So when you try to run it the first time, so like, you have to install it, your standard, how you got to use your packages in R. So after you've done that, when you go to use it the first time, it's going to kind of go through this authentication process where whatever internet browser you use, Chrome, Firefox, whatever, it'll pop up and it'll be like, hey, like R is trying to break into your Google stuff. Like, are you cool with this? So then you go ahead and you'll log in, and thankfully that'll be the only time that you have to do that. But after that, at any time you run it, you just have to confirm that like, oh, hey, we have this email just saved from last time. Do you want to use it? Yes. So in doing that, or the advantage of doing that is for multiple reasons, depending on like what's going on, right? So if you are working, for example, like on a team, because for me, I'm the only person kind of working in this department right now, but there's going to be a point in where I'm going to have to transfer things or I'm going to have to pass them along. So for people that don't know R, but like are interested in learning, what I've been realizing is that people get really scared when they have to deal with the directories. And I know because I used to be one of those people. So you definitely, totally can, go to Google Sheets and download a CSV or whatever. You can do that. But taking the time to kind of set up that authentication process with Google Sheets 4 kind of takes that step out. Because if you have a situation where multiple people can edit and add data to, which is my situation at my job. At my job, I have like there is one account that is shared by many people, and it drives me insane. That is not the best practice, but that's what it is. Because there's so much uncertainty that can happen, so many changes that can happen. It's really good to be able to pull it from the source. Because you can have a saved file somewhere locally on your computer, think that it's updated and it's fine, but if you literally forgot to re-download it, then you're not updating it. So while you can totally do it without it, it's probably really good that you do. I feel like it maintains some type of integrity as well. So you can keep tabs of what's going on in your data. So I hope I answered the question.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's helpful, just thinking about the idea, especially in a situation where multiple people are potentially editing. You don't know like say you're doing a survey like you were for this, in this example, you don't know if more people have submitted the survey since the last time you ran your code. Mm-hmm. So if I heard you correctly, it sounds like what you're saying is one of the advantages is you can always be sure that you're getting the most up-to-date data, mm-hmm. because your R code pulls it in directly from Google Sheets, as opposed to a manual step of you going onto Google Sheets, hitting the file download, and then working with it.
Absolutely.
And that's, you talked about an API connection. For folks who aren't familiar, that's just basically an interface that allows one program to interact with another. In this case, our Studio to interact, or R, I guess, to interact with Google Sheets, right, to make that possible. I'm just curious. So I asked about advantages to using to this type of workflow. Mm-hmm. Do you see any disadvantages? Any negatives that you've ever encountered?
Yeah, I've definitely encountered. With this little example, one not so much, but like my bigger one, the disadvantages I think is not related to the use of the package itself. It's honestly like an organization department thing of like, why do we have 8 people on one Google account making changes? Mm-hmm. Usually it's been pretty solid. I think there might have been, like a rare time where like something did not connect properly with the API. And I don't remember if it was because like I was sending the query too much, like I was like running the code back to back to back because like I was trying to debug something. that's when I kind of like started adding like these little different things in the code. Is kind of like, well, why is that there? And it's like to make it pause so that we don't lock ourselves out. um or to check for things. I realized like I had to debug a lot, and like when you're constantly pulling, like that's why I have in the code, I know we're going to get into it, but there is well, for this example, a really basic data validation of like, oh, the number of rows in the data changed since we last pulled it. So something like that will be like, okay, if it's, it'll I think for this one, I had it be that, oh, if its math is the same, like it doesn't have to go through a processing script or something like that. But you can change it to make it so that it won't like keep calling from it if like you have what you need in the session already. Honestly, I think
Right.
that was the only issue I've ever had. Honestly, I personally just have not ran into any issues doing it this way yet.
Good to know. Well, let's go ahead and get started looking at your example code. I've pulled in your code from this awesome survey example. I'd love to have you just kind of walk me through the pieces and explain how it all works. And actually, maybe before we get into the code, if you can just talk through, like, what is the awesome survey example that you made? Like, what's the data that obviously fake data that you put together?
Sure. So, what I wanted to do for the example is kind of get as close to what I've been encountering in the wild as possible. So a lot of the Google Forms that I had to deal with and process are ones that had different, like logic paths on them, like different sections. And I did that intentionally because it makes the data kind of output in a weird way because they're nesting columns and different stuff like that. So, for this one, I kind of just had really basic demographic, like, oh, how old are you? Do you like to play video games? I love to play video games. That's why, I put it there. Then it kind of just asks you about your favorite video games. And then I think the next one kind of goes into, music. Yeah. The next one goes into music and it's just asking like, oh, like, what's your favorite artist? So I wanted to give a mix of questions that were multiple choice where you could only select one option, then questions that were, select all that apply, the checkbox questions, and then like an open-ended, just to kind of give a real example of different things I'd have to encounter in the wild.
All right, so I'm looking at the data here, and we can imagine that this comes from a survey done with Google Forms where someone gets asked these questions. So here, let me just be slightly wider. Okay, so do you like to play video games? How old are you? What kind of games? Favorite game? Some music genres that you like, and who is your favorite artist? Okay. Just so folks like kind of know what the data that we're working with is. So why don't you then kind of point me to like how I would, if you were working on this, where like explain the different parts of it and how everything works.
Sure. So I see that you're just kind of on the directory. So this is just how I always organize my things. I don't have any tips on like the best practices for this. This is just how I do this. So I always have a folder for data, a folder for any kind of reports, and for scripts. So if we're going to look at the actual code for this, we would be going into the scripts folder. Okay. Now, the main script that does everything is the docking script, which is that first script listed there.
All right, so let's talk about how this works. So looks like first you're just loading a few packages, Tidyverse, Google Sheets 4, and then Janitor. So you're setting data updated to be equal to false. I assume that's going to be related to this down here when we're actually determining whether or not to pull in new data.
Right.
Is that right?
Correct. So this is like the most manual part. So when you do set up your scripts to do this, There's probably some way we can automatically pull this, but I'm not going to try to figure that out. So basically what you need to do, if you have a spreadsheet that's already live and living on your Google Drive somewhere, you need to pull the URL for it. So, cause we need to feed that into Google Sheets. So that's what that main spreadsheet variable is or value is. Mm-hmm.
So that was just, I delete that,
Mm-hmm.
paste in that just to show folks that was the same exact.
Yep.
All right. So I'll run that. So we have that defined for later.
Mm-hmm. So the next line, this is kind of starting to set up that authentication where it's going to say like, hey, like, can I connect to your Google account? Things like that. And I've wrapped it in some extra things. And I'm trying to remember. I feel like for the original script I had this in, there was an issue where like I had this really long script of a lot of things going on, and whenever I hit the source button, it would like skip over things. So if there was an error with like, an address, a Gmail address wasn't found or something else, it wasn't giving the user time to respond back to it. So,
Gotcha.
yeah, so I put in this read line prompt, functions or group of functions to kind of make the console stop and be like, hey, are you sure this is the address you want to do? Whatever.
So when I run that, it gives me this thing, this prompt here.
Mm-hmm.
Is it okay to cache OAuth access credentials?
Mm-hmm.
I have, of course, used Google Sheets for, so it's not sending me to the browser to authenticate that way.
Right.
But it's just going to ask me that, and I'll say yes. Oh, wait. Huh. Did do that. Okay. So then it just says authentication complete. Close this page and return to R. And I see. So you've added this where you have to hit enter to confirm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So now at this point, I'm authenticated, which means I can actually use this data, or I can use the Google Sheets API or the Google Sheets 4 package using the API to get that data directly from Google Sheets.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it looks like you're next using the read sheet function.
Mm-hmm.
I'm guessing that comes from Google
Yes,
Sheets
it does.
4.
Yep.
So let me even just run this to see. Okay, so if I look at that, I can see. So it's pulled in that exact data here and created a tibble based on that.
Yep.
Cool. So it actually looks in many ways really similar. It's same idea as like read CSV, read underscore CSV, but the only thing that looks different here is you need to set the sheet, and I assume that is the name here in case you have like multiple sheets or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let me run that because then it looks like you just select a few of the variables.
Yeah.
So I'll take a look there. Okay, perfect. So now that seemed very simple, but that's actually in many ways like the most kind of profound part of this is pulling in data that way as opposed to, and again, it's simple, but it's if you think about the opposite approach, which would be to go file, download CSV, then you copy that CSV into your RStudio project, then you run, have code to open that CSV. And I don't even know what it calls them. I guess it just calls it awesome survey example. I was thinking if it calls it something like different depending on the date, then it might be different. But in any case, what you're able to do is just have code that is, automatically pulls in whatever data is there. All right. So this is actually something I hadn't seen before. So talk me through how you do this kind of data validation to check if there's any differences between what was there, what you have already previously saved and what's on Google Sheets now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, for this example, this is a really, really simplified, version. Like in the wild, I have to do more advanced stuff than this, like checking data types, everything. But the purpose of this, script here is to see like, okay, are there any more rows added? Right. So in order to do that, when you're setting up and doing all of this for the first time, you kind of have to do this work that you're not going to reproduce again. In a sense of creating a master data file to get it started. So, I mean, if you're going to do this, there's an anticipation that you might already have some data live on Google and you might not. But the processing script that's kind of like under this, a few lines down, has it where after, we verify that, okay, we brought in new data, we've done whatever we needed to do, it will save a new master file if there's been any changes. So pretty much you just have one data frame to start with that is going to act as your master. And then whatever kind of way you choose to check if there's changes, whether there's actual variable value changes or row column changes, whatever, you instill that. And if a change is detected, that line number 31 is going to switch the data updated variable that we had at the beginning, and it's going to switch it to true if there's some change in the number of rows for this. Yeah.
So this is saying if n row of new data, which in this case is 4, is not equal to n row of master data, which is also 4. So if it's not, this is a double negative. If it's not equal to that, which it's not, no, sorry, it is equal to that. So this will be false because they actually are equal. And so data updated will actually continue to be false.
Right. And I mean, like for that logic component, that really just works however your brain works. So if it's easier, it's easier for you to have an equality comparison there instead of a non-equality, then totally change that to work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So then it looks like what you're doing is you're basically saying only if this is the same as saying if data updated equals true, then run that. And so if I actually try and run this, it's not going to run because data updated does not equal true. It equals false. Let's actually just look briefly though what's in that processing script.
What did I do?
Why don't you talk me through what you
so it looks like it's just cleaning. Okay, so I pulled the data in and listen, I hope no one is gonna make fun of me for like my naming conventions, but this is just kind of how I do it. If I'm pulling in a data frame and I'm modifying it, I add _mod to the name so that I can kind of keep track of like, okay, all I did was modify things here. I modified it again. And usually I'll have some kind of documentation outside of R that's explaining like, okay, in this data frame, this is the changes that happened or whatever. Basically what this is doing is pulling the data in as is. And, what I was kind of referencing before about having those different sections in Google Forms, if you pull it down like raw, it kind of does this weird, thing where like, so for your checkbox answers, like your questions where you can select all that apply, it, combines them into like one huge string of your string values kind of separated by commas. Yeah. So in order to kind of work to get to that, there's this whole process of like, oh, I need to clean my names because to make the survey readable to the human eye, they can't having like underscores and everything in them. Because what ends up happening is that the variable names are just essentially the questions. So you're not like typing your questions in like an actual readable code format. So there's this process of cleaning that and then renaming it to make that, process easier for you on the back end. Like, cause I don't want to sit there and be like, oh, do _you _like you'll just go ahead and just rename them. Then I relocated some things there just because I'm really like anal about like where my things are. You don't have to do that.
I get it.
But like a lot of this is what I'm doing is, just kind of prepping it for whatever the next stages are. So I see like that last one on line 14, I'm adding a factor because I'm like, oh, like I want to keep this in a certain order. These are numeric categories, but they're not, it's just little quirky things. Whatever I ran into, that's
Sure.
where, that's what's in here. Mm-hmm.
Uh, and so then we have new data mod, which isn't actually going to necessarily look different, although, for example, age is a factor, which it wasn't when we just have new data. So if I just hover there, you can see that that's a character
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to a factor.
Mm-hmm.
So that looks like you're recoding missing values for all factors. Which doesn't actually. Oh no, or no, sorry, you're recoding
So,
where it's
yeah,
everything that's not a
everything outside of
factor.
factor,
Sorry.
right?
Okay. So then here you end up with this new data mod 2, and this is an example where you have, for example, if you look at like music genres, people could select multiple things and they show up in that kind of format where they're comma separated but within a single cell,
Mm-hmm.
within a single cell in that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to get like too deep into tidy data because it's not really the
I
main
know.
topic of what we're discussing. But the main thing you're doing then is you're getting this into a tidy format.
Mm-hmm.
So talk about these 3 lines, how they work and what they're doing.
Sure. So I'm just pulling from that last modified data frame, just piping it. And I'm taking out anything that's not music related or anything that I felt didn't need to be in this data frame. So I just took out anything that contained the word game. So any column, any variable that contained the word or the string game. Then that last line, I believe that's from the tidier packet. And what that does is it will split those comma separated values into their own variable, I believe.
All right, so let's go ahead and run that, and then I'm going to open up new data music. So now, yeah, I can see, for example, music genres for participant 1, looks like they listed like 9 different things, and they're each on their own line. But that favorite artist, which was only one thing, you can see it just shows up 9
Right.
times for them because they again, it was only one
Mm-hmm.
thing. So actually, I'm just looking at one thing because I think, let's see, I'm guessing that's top 40.
Oh, look at you. You caught something. Yes. Yeah. So,
So I'm guessing you probably want to add,
yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
I think it was separating by, I don't remember what the default is for separate
I felt like
rows.
it was, I thought the space
Space,
or
maybe?
comma, one of them.
Oh, it's some regex that I am
Oh,
terrible
geez. Me too.
at.
Oh, gosh.
It looks like I think that's looking for non-character or
Oh,
something.
man. You're better than me.
In any case, like what I do, we the only reason I'm thinking about this so much is I actually one of my consultants actually just wrote a blog post about working with this exact type of data.
Yeah.
So, like a separator like
Mm-hmm.
that is what we'll usually do. Cool. So I actually I think it's a good point. Like, and this is a bit far afield from the specific focus today, but like this idea that you take your data and put it into multiple data frames, or tables is really helpful because people, I think, too often think, okay, this is my data. I need to keep it in this exact,
Mm-hmm.
one data frame that's this many rows, this many columns. Like, no, what you're showing is you can actually put it into multiple data
Mm-hmm.
frames. You can see you even have one here with new data
Mm-hmm.
games that you create that's just about like games that they
Mm-hmm.
play. And then looks like you save each of those
Yep.
separately.
Yes, I do. And I do this because, um, Honestly, so I got into the habit of doing this, and I'm not going to sit here and say whether it's best practice or not, but I had ran into so many issues thinking that I had to keep my data together. And where that will get you is when you are trying to work with ggplot. Because for different things you're trying to visualize, it might be you need things grouped differently, or like if you're trying to do something fancy and you need to pull something out, it's kind of just like, man, if I just had a separate data frame for this, I would probably have less
Yeah,
headaches.
definitely. Definitely. Yep. All right. So thinking back to this docking script. So even though we just showed all that, that actually wouldn't have run because data updated was actually not equal to true. So that all that here only happens if there essentially is new data in this Google Sheet that differs from the data that you already have saved. And so you make 3 different objects. You also make a unique artist,
Mm-hmm.
which has a list of unique artists. And then you save those as RDS
Yep.
files. And then talk about this, how you're like saving the new copy as the master file, replacing the old master file. What's up with that?
So I have started doing that because it'll be that I'll have a good few weeks where nothing is broken, and then something is broken, and then I need to revert back to something to try to kind of like trace my steps. So if you add this, because what's going to end up happening is that that next line under there, I think line number 42, what it's doing is that if it gets to that point in the script and there were no errors thrown, my logic here that I've programmed in is that, okay, if you got to this point, we can save this as the new master. You've already saved everything. You've done your processing. You're good. This is now your new master. So if something ends up happening where like we should not have saved it as a new master, like there's an error, or like, I don't know, I don't know what would happen in this specific example, but I've had instances where, especially like if I'm geoprocessing something, like, and I'm using all of that time to like calculate things. So, I have screwed myself. So, what this is doing is
Yeah.
kind of like giving you a safeguard of like, oh, you messed that up. Hey, we have this like old master file here you can revert back to. So this would require you manually going in and like, I don't know, opening up the old master data file and then resaving that as master data, something like that. However, the individual is going to end up debugging for that.
Gotcha. So you rename it and then you save the new data that you brought in as that master data.
Mm-hmm.
So again, you have the most recent version that you've brought in as master data and old master data as the previous version in case whatever happens. And then you have a couple things here where you're removing everything that was created as part of this script and then just sending a message. Cool. So pretending that new data was actually brought in, then what you actually do, you have a couple other steps in this docking script. You're actually first, and this is interesting, this is a different way than I typically do it, not that it's better or worse, but you have a viz script.
Yep.
Where you're actually making all of your visualization. So talk about how that works.
Sure. So I started breaking down my code like this because what would end up happening was I'd be on top of the world and be like, oh my God, I got like this 4,000 line script and it's doing amazing things. Yeah. But then when something goes wrong, it is a pain in the behind to find what's wrong. So if I have it modularized like this, I at least have a better picture of like, okay, where did my thing fail? What's the problem? So this is just a convenience factor for me because my brain, like if I see too many lines, like my brain just dies. I don't know. I have to keep everything separate. Yeah.
So you're actually then reading in the data that you actually had just saved in the processing script. Again, if it's different than was already saved. and then you are making a visual. Um, wait, is this looks like two of the same thing? Am I?
Is it making a visual? Oh, yeah, because because I was trying to like I was gonna make more, but then I kind of just like was like I don't have time for
Oh,
this. So I just
no, that's fine.
yeah, so
Gotcha.
ignore
So
those
here,
first three lines.
all right. So you make a visualization, and I'll just comment that out and like show. Okay, here's the visualization, and then you save it as games
Mhm.
viz. And then what you do is you actually save games viz, that object, as an RDS
Mhm.
file in reports plots game
Mhm.
viz.rds. And what that allows you to do then is in this last step is where you're actually doing the
Yep.
reporting.
So that'll be in the
So
reports file. Yeah, that RMD.
you have an R Markdown document
Hmm.
that brings this in. Well, yeah, actually, maybe talk through this first code chunk after the setup code
Hmm.
chunk. What's this doing here, and how does that work?
Yes. So what I did was bring in a copy of the master data file. So basically just a copy of the data that came directly from Google Forms. In this case, though, this
Okay.
was before any kind of modification or anything happened to it. Basically, the main concept here is that I am bringing in the data as it came in. Pretty much as it came in before I tried to start like pulling everything apart for the visuals. Because what I end up seeing a lot of the time is that it's really useful for when I am doing like not so much visuals, but if I have like text or like I'm dropping in inline R code and I want to pull it directly
Yeah.
from the data, it helps me to just easily reference that if I have it in the markdown session here.
Cool. So if I run this, for example, it brings in and creates an object called survey
Mm-hmm.
data that just has participant ID and their
Right.
age. And then you're bringing in games data and artists, which is part of the data that you saved previously in that processing script. So you saved, I think it was right
Mm-hmm.
there. Let me make sure. Yep. That favorite artist, which you're then reading in
Mm-hmm.
here. And so games data again was an RDS
Mm-hmm.
file that you saved. Then you take that survey data and you just make, for example, make a
Yeah.
table of all participants. And obviously you can do whatever
Yeah.
you want in terms of making your table look nicer and that kind of
Yeah.
thing. Again, that's not really the point
Right.
here. But let me run
Sure.
this code chunk.
Mm-hmm.
So what you've done is you've actually read in that
Mm-hmm.
gameviz.rds to an object called gamesviz, and then you just
Mm-hmm.
display it here. And that allows you to then have it included in your
Right.
report. Um, cool. One last thing you did, you used some, you talked before about inline
Mm-hmm.
R code. If someone isn't familiar with inline R code, explain what it is and how you use it
Sure.
here.
So it's a way for you to add our code in line with some text that you have. So I usually use it when I am trying to have a paragraph or any kind of section of text where I'm referencing data. It's really a good way to keep some integrity with your data. If you're like, oh, we had 50 participants, and it might be that in that little inline R code, you're reading the number of rows of data if each row is a participant or something like that. So it's just a really quick way for you to kind of just drop in like I use it to drop in values of things, calculations, really quick counts.
Mm-hmm.
I've never used it for anything like, I don't even know if you can use it for anything that's like really expensive. But I usually use that if I have like values I need to drop in, whether they are numeric, categorical or string like I've done here.
Yeah, so you took the vector
Mhm.
artists and okay, what is this function? Because I think I need this
Yes,
function
this
and I don't
function
know
is
it.
great. So this is from the knitter package. So what it will do is it will take all of any like a vector of strings that you give it, and it will automatically give you an Oxford comma and an and at the end. It is
Oh my goodness.
amazing. It's
Okay,
amazing.
I don't I have needed this so many times and I've made such hacky code to do
Yeah,
this
no, I
exact thing.
found it because I had one of the work that like I do have publicized is like I have a dashboard that the my county department uses, and there's a section where we list like any kind of suspected drugs that we might have found. So it was perfect
Mm,
for that because a lot of times like you might have like multiple values. And I was just like, man, there's no way that I'm gonna go ahead and like code all of this manually.
oh my goodness. Yeah, wow. Okay, that is amazing. So when you knit this, you end up with this report. Obviously, again, could improve the
Of course.
visualizations. Don't focus on that. But you end up, for example, here, that text is outputted. Nirvana, the Beatles, MGK, and
Mhm,
Guar. You have your visualization and your table as
mhm.
well. So if I go back to the original docking script, you actually have code that will render that. So if I run that, that will just update that example
Yep.
report, and it hasn't changed. No, nothing has changed, so it's going to look exactly the
Right.
same. Um, but let me actually go in for a second
Sure.
to here, and let's pretend that we got some new
Sure.
data. Actually, let me add someone
Mhm.
new. Fresh prints. All right. So now I'm going to go ahead and just
Sure.
restart my session. But if I just run this whole
Mhm,
script, unless I mess something up, I'm going to put it kind of back exactly how it was. I don't think I messed anything up. In theory, what it should do is go to Google Sheets, bring in my
mhm,
data, process my data using the processing script, because now data updated should be set to true because there are 5 rows, whereas there was 4
mhm,
before. It'll create those visuals, save them like we showed before in that viz
mhm.
script, and then it will render this report with that
Right.
new data. Okay,
Sure.
let's try. Oh, wait.
Oh yeah. See, this is why I have the source and the and the block because the block won't work without the source. Like it unless you source it.
Yep. Oh, wait, did that?
Yeah. So now you're gonna have to. So I would suggest just
Okay.
pressing the source button and then letting it do its thing because then it'll stop the script for you.
Oh, I have never
See?
seen that.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right. So, okay, that was
Mhm.
really fast. Let's go back here. And again, we've got 4 rows
You gotta
here.
refresh it though.
Let's,
No.
yeah,
Mhm.
let me, perfect. So now I've got 5 rows. I've got my new person here, my charts updated, and the favorites have also updated because we can see fresh prints is there. So we've done that in a really simple way, but if you're doing something where you're getting like dozens or hundreds of surveys, the cool thing is you can do this kind of at
Mhm.
will and automatically get updated data whenever you
Right.
want. So
Yeah.
that's super
Love it.
cool. Cool. Was there anything I asked you about in this code that I should
No,
have?
I think you touched on like most of the main important parts, because I think the biggest thing I think when people see something like this is they always ask me like, why do you break everything up? I'm like, because you don't understand.
Mm,
You don't understand all the hours of
yeah.
crying I did because I couldn't find things.
Yeah, definitely. I'll even show actually I was the call I had earlier today was with, do you know who Matt Herman
I don't think so.
is?
Hmm.
Anyway, he made this, I'll show you. He actually made a really amazing COVID tracking website for Westchester County, New
Okay.
York. And
Ooh.
he was showing me how it all works, and he has a very similar
Hmm.
approach. So I think it was, wait, oh no, in the R, this, for example, you can see he's got one R. The website has multiple
Okay.
data sources. So there's basically one script for each source that he's pulling
Hmm.
data from. So there's like hospital occupancy data, there's hotspot
Hmm.
zones, but very similar kind of modularized
So I do this
approach.
too with a unfortunately, but one I can't show you. It's like the all of my
Yeah,
Nalox
yeah,
tracker stuff. I have this as well because I have it coming
sure.
from different sources. So it makes sense to like
Yep,
break it down and have different data or different scripts for different data sources. Mhm.
totally, totally. Um, cool. Well, Megan, thanks for joining me today. I really appreciate it. If people want to connect with you, where would be the best place to do
Best
that?
place is probably Twitter. At my handle, it's my first name. It's at MEGHANSHARRIS. That's my full name, Megan S. Harris. I am also on LinkedIn as well. I believe that name is just my first name and last name. So MEGHAN little dash and Harris, HARRIS.
Super. And I'll say if people follow you on Twitter, they can also see some of the really cool art,
If you get
generative art
spammed by
that
my art.
you do. It's not spam. People love it. I love seeing it. It's really cool to see what else art
I
can
try
do.
to, calm down with it a little bit. Sometimes I'm just like, I get super excited.
Yeah. I mean, there's a great community of people who make generative art with R. So, super. Well, thanks again, Megan. I appreciate you talking
Thank you
with me
so
today.
much, David. Thank you for inviting me.
That's it for today's episode. I hope you learned something new about how you can use R. Do you know anyone else who might be interested in this episode? Please share it with them. If you're interested in learning R, check out R for the Rest of Us. We've got courses to help you no matter whether you're just starting out with R or you've got years of experience. Do you work for an organization that needs help communicating effectively with data? Check out our consulting services at rfortherestofus.com/consulting. We work with clients to make high-quality data visualization, beautiful reports made entirely with R, interactive maps, and much, much more. And before we go, one last request. Do you know anyone who's using R in a unique and creative way? We're always looking for new guests for the R for the Rest of Us podcast. If you know someone who would be a good guest, please email me at david@rfortherestofus.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.